Hi there guys, and welcome to another episode of the Cover Zero Show with me, your host, Simon Conboy. Today's episode is going to be my 2017 NFL playoff predictions. Just going to go through the AFC, the NFC, and give you my projected seedings for those divisions over this season and basically why I think they're going to end up that way. So, we're going to start off in the NFC with my projected number one seed, that being the Seattle Seahawks. If there's one division I feel very confident about in terms of who the winner is going to be this season in that conference, it's got to be the Seahawks. The Cardinals had a real down season. I think there's a lot of question marks there. The Rams, there's so much that needs to happen on that offense after fielding one of the worst offenses I've ever seen last season for them to be competing. And the Niners are in the midst of a rebuild. That's going to be a very different looking roster heading into this season. It's hard to see them turning it around that quickly, especially with the consistency the Seahawks have had. Defensively, the personnel is very much the same core guys that have got them near or thereabouts in terms of winning the Super Bowl the last few seasons. Their schedule is not particularly challenging this season. I think that's a real plus. I think they'll comfortably win. Maybe I can see the Seahawks nicking a game off and maybe the Rams, because for some reason the Rams tend to knock them off once. But I think they win the division comfortably, and just because their schedule is a little bit lighter than some of what I think of the other teams on their kind of level or around them, I think they end up winning 12, 13 games, walking into the playoffs with home field advantage, which will of course be a huge boon because they've got one of the best home field advantages in the league. Russell Wilson looks great. He was great last year. I think the protection will almost be better by default, even with some of the issues that they've had this off-season, losing George Fant for the entire season. It's an issue. They've not necessarily shown enough to say they're going to be better on paper, but it's hard to imagine it being worse. Defensively, while those guys are still there, this is going to be a team that wins double-digit games more often than not. So they're my number one seed. The number two seed, I currently have the Buccaneers filling that spot. This is simply because, some will call it homer bias. That's fine. I will accept that. I think the Falcons are going to start a bit slowly, whilst I think they've done a great job retaining the roster they had last year. Never seen so much continuity between two teams that played in a Super Bowl from one season to the next. It's really surprising. I think the Buccaneers have the best defense in a division that's full of what should be effective offenses, and I think that will be the difference maker. There's a lot of hype around the team, but they've stayed pretty healthy thus far in the off-season. I think in Jameis Winston's third year, that's often the year you see a quarterback make a big leap. I still stand by Matt Ryan's season last year. I still think he's a very good quarterback, but last year was the exception rather than the rule at this point. So I'm not sure he produces on that level again, especially with Shanahan gone to San Francisco. I think the Buccaneers defense gives them the edge. I think they've got one of the best front sevens in football on paper. The Chris Baker signing gives them depth and quality at the defensive tackle spot. They've got some depth at end. If they can get, Noah Spence can develop and become a really good pass rusher, I think that the group is going to be really, really good. The secondary is a bit of an issue. The offensive line has looked better than I expected. I think they're going to be a 11-12 win team, even though the schedule's pretty tough. That could hold them back. But similarly, with my free seed, I've currently got the Philadelphia Eagles. Much like the Bucs, I think this team's done a really good job strengthening themselves this year around a young quarterback. Of course, a totally revamped receiving group. A very difficult schedule for the AFC East teams. They've got to play against the West. And even the games within the own division. The AFC West, that's going to be tough. So certainly not going to be easy for them. I think that will stop them competing for home field. These teams are going to beat each other up, take some wins off of one another. But at the end of the day, I think this team's really improved itself. The addition of Ronald Darby, I think, is going to be a real big one if they can find a running back, because I don't think Blunt is going to be good enough to carry the load for this team. If they can find a running back, then I think maybe they can push for more. But at this point, I think they're going to win 10 or 11 games, just about win the NFC East and go in as the number 3 seed. My number 4 seed is the Packers. I think this team has a lot of issues on the defensive side of the ball, more than usual. The secondary, we saw what happened last year against some good teams. It's not a great group. The defensive line doesn't look great on paper. You've got Mike Daniels and not much else. I worry about the linebacking group. If Nick Perry falls off, having just been paid, that's going to be a big problem. Julius Peppers has been a big part of this defence. Whilst he's only a rotational player, he's been a big part of it. They lost Micah Hyde to the Bills. I think that's going to affect them because his versatility was a big part of it. What limited success they had, he really did fill a lot of holes, especially when these guys were either not playing well in the backfield or there were injuries. That was an incredibly useful thing for them. I still worry about this run game. No one's really stepped up. And Aaron Rodgers is going to take this team to around 10 wins. But I just think there's so many flaws. I think the Vikings are a good team. I think the Bears are going to be better than people think. Even the Lions, I don't think it's an easy division by any means. None of them, I think, they've all got glaring holes. But I think the Packers just about take the division off the Vikings and manage to get into that 4th spot. The 5th seed, I've currently got the Atlanta Falcons. And so I'm not as confident in them defensively as I am the Buccaneers. It's pretty much splitting hairs. I think they'll finish with almost identical records. Could certainly go either way. I just think there'll be a slight drop off on the offense. The defense, I'm still not entirely sold on. They did play well at times last year defensively, and they did get better as the season wore on. But I think there's some. I have some worries about the pass rush. If Vic Beasley doesn't perform like he did last year, I'm not sure. You've got rookie Tack McKinley, but there's not much else. They're very reliant on him. They need to get the good version of Dontari Poe. Whilst I think Grady Jarrett showed a lot last season, if he can step up, that could help. The offense should be great again. I just think it's unlikely the offensive line gets as lucky as it did. They stayed intact for an entire season. That's incredibly rare, and that was a massive part of their success last season. I think Ryan drops down to earth a little. They're still a very good team. They still win 10 or 11 games. I think they end up, could easily be the 2, but I think they sneak in just behind the Bucs. And my 6th seed is the New York Giants, and that simply comes down to this defense and the weapons they've got in that receiving game. Whilst I think the offense is going to be very stop-start, much like it was last season, the run game non-existent once again. The offensive line, a major, major problem. I think Eli will do enough with Odell Beckham there, Sterling Shepard another year in the offense, Evan Ingram, Brandon Marshall I think he'll help more in the red zone than anything. I don't think he's going to be a high volume target like he has at times in the past. But I think that's a lot of weapons. I think they'll get the job done. And I think this defence is just stellar. If you ignore the linebacker spot, it's great at every spot. Linebacker spot's a problem, but with the front 4 they've got, that front 4 can generate pass rush. They can stop the run. The secondary, they've got good talent at corner. And Landon Collins, what a season he had last year. If he can replicate that, this defence will be really good. Much like with the Buccaneers and Falcons, I could see this team going the distance in terms of the divisional race. Once again, they're going to drop some games just because their schedule's rough. The reason I don't have the East teams above the South teams, I think the South teams have a slightly easier schedule. AFC East and the NFC North are not as threatening as the groups these guys are playing. And as well as that, in the NFC East, they'll beat each other up. So I've got them coming in at 6. Not enormously confident in it because I hate putting a team with such a bad O-line in. But I mean, I already did it with the Seahawks. So, in for a penny, in for a pound. So a couple of notes on some other teams. The Cowboys I would have had making the playoffs, but I think the Ezekiel Elliott suspension is too much. Along with some of the other suspensions, I have massive concerns about this defensive group, as will most people. Relying on Taco Charlton to turn up and be dominant in year one is not a recipe for success in terms of rushing the passer. Some of the other guys have suspensions. I have no faith that this secondary is going to come together quick enough for them to be a dominating group. I think teams will defend what they did well last year in the passing game better. Prescott's a really good player. I'm very confident he's going to continue to develop. But I think without Ezekiel Elliott for 6 games, that's just going to be proved to be a bit too much for this team. If that suspension gets reduced to 3 games, I will reconsider my position on this. But 6 is just too many for this team to overcome, even with some pretty good backup running backs. Redskins, I don't think they're going to be good enough. I think their offense is going to have growing pains with this new group of receivers. Sean Jackson and Pierre Garçon were very good there. I do not think the guys they have now are just going to step in and replace them immediately. Jordan Reed's foot issues concern me. Defensively, too many question marks for me. Saints, until I see it in the regular season, that defense stand up, just not going to happen. Panthers, I've too many concerns about the defense. And the Vikings I want to, but I just can't see them putting up enough points. I think defensively they'll be great, but Sam Bradford is thoroughly uninspiring. That offensive line is atrocious, and it's looked really bad in the preseason, which is a worrying sign. I don't put too much stock in preseason, but they were an abomination last year, and I haven't seen enough to change my opinion on that. The Lions, I think they could have competed, but injuries, I think, are going to be too much to overcome. Losing Taylor Decker there, I think, is brutal for them. I think that's really hurt their chances. And the Cardinals, just too many question marks for me. So we've got my 6. I'll just go over them quickly in case you missed it. I've got the Seahawks at 1, the Buccaneers at 2, but it could easily be the Falcons. The Eagles coming in as the 3 seed. The Packers as the 4 seed. The Falcons as the 5 seed. And the Giants as the 6 seed. Moving over to the AFC. It's a 2-horse race, as I've suggested in the podcast over the last couple of weeks, or our roundtable episodes. Number 1 seed is going to be the Patriots. I don't think their schedule's particularly difficult beyond... The NFC South's a tough one, but I think they've got a really good secondary, and that'll match them up quite well with what's a pretty high-profile passing division, I suppose. And they're the Patriots. They're going to be the 1 or the 2. It's between them and the Steelers. It really is. They're both clearly the class of their divisions. They've got the track record, the consistency. It's bordering on impossible to really bet against them. And the AFC West, while I really like those teams, as I say, they play the NFC East, which is pretty good. They'll beat each other up. All those teams could drop a game or 2 to that division. So as a result, I don't think any of them will be able to compete for this 1 seed. And the AFC South is just not good. So, Patriots at 1. They're a legit Super Bowl contender, as are the Steelers. I think they slide in at 2. I think it's huge that the Steelers try and get home field, because they always struggle with the Patriots come playoff time, and I just can't see them winning it at Gillette Stadium. They need to try and get that 1 seed, but I just think the Patriots will end up edging it. Got the new and improved Steelers, because the Joe Hayden and Vance McDonald signings, I don't know if I've ever seen a team have such a good day about a week before the season begins. Whilst I'm very dubious about the money involved in the Joe Hayden signing, I'm sure it's probably a one-year deal, essentially. I'm sure they can probably cut him at very little cost next year. But I think those are 2 signings that potentially make this team even better, and they were a contender before. But I've got them winning the AFC North, as I suggested, very comfortably. Coming in as the 3 seed, I've currently got the Chiefs. I like them over the Raiders simply because of the balance of this team. Defensively, I think they're stacked. They've got talent at every level. They've got pass rushers for days. Benny Logan was one of my favourite signings in the offseason. I think he'll be an upgrade over Poe. A really big fan of that Raglan trade that they made with the Bills. I think he'll be able to step in eventually this season. It's going to probably take him a while to get the playbook down, but I think he's going to be an improvement. I just think defensively they're going to be very, very good. I think the offense will be good enough. Andy Reid does a great job, getting this team to produce enough points with what's not been a great talent level. Whilst losing Macklin hurt, he's not a world beater. Tyreek Hill will give them some explosion if they can get. And I've really been impressed with Kareem Hunt. I think he'll give them enough to get that 3 seed and win the West. The 4 seed, I've got the Titans. I just don't feel good about the Texans' offense. It's not even just about the quarterback position. I don't think the offensive line was great last year. That's looked really bad thus far in preseason. With the Will Fuller injury, Fuller dropped a lot of balls, but at least he gave a threat opposite DeAndre Hopkins. I like the Foreman and Lamar Miller combination, but I'm not sure it's going to thrive behind the run blocking that they've got. Miller showed last year he's not a premier sort of bell cow type running back. He's a good option. And Savage is limited. I think that ends up being too much. When I look at this offense, I see only really 2 top tier players in Hopkins and Dwayne Brown. That's not enough. Whilst the Titans do have their issues, I think the secondary's a mess. I think the receiving group might take a while to come together. I do think they're going to be good enough to win what's a pretty poor division with a pretty light schedule, frankly. Coming in as the 5 seed, I've got the Oakland Raiders. I think they just get pipped to the post by the Chiefs. This offense should be very, very good. Marshawn Lynch is probably going to disappoint some people who are going to just kind of expect him to come back and be a 1,100 yard back with highlight reel runs all over the place again, just because it's a nice story. I don't see that being the case, but I do think they've got some talent in the backfield alongside him in Rashard and Washington. So behind that offensive line, those 3 will be able to produce. Derek Carr was great last year. There's reason to think he'll be even better this year, particularly with Cooper continuing to develop. Cooper just needs to add a bit of consistency to his game. So this offense, I expect them to be a top tier group. Defensively, a bit more concerned. Khalil Mack's a stud, of course. They've got pass rushers. In Bruce Irvin, they'll be able to rush the passer. And Mario Edwards is back. That will help. Worry about the secondary. Worry about the rest of the linebacker group. Because who knows how they use Mack and Irvin as linebacker, D-end hybrids. But I worry about the secondary. I worry about that group. I think that ends up holding them back. You can't win shootouts every week. You will drop a couple of them every now and then. And this team, they got a lot of the lucky breaks last year. I do think they'll be very good, but I think, again, they just faltered to the Chiefs. Chiefs have the experience. They've been there. They've done it. And I think they'll get it done once again. And then my number 6 seed. I have struggled with this one. I've gone back and forth on it, and there's a number of teams I can put there. So we'll go with who I'm feeling today. And that team is the Cincinnati Bengals. I was feeling really bad about this team not so long ago. I still don't feel great about them, and it might change in a couple of days. I think Joe Mixon's going to give them a real spark. I think the offensive line it's quelled some of my fears. I thought they were going to be a mess with the changes, but they've looked all right. And a lot of these youngsters on the defensive side, they've shown me something in the preseason. Again, it's only preseason. I tend not to put too much stock in it, but this again shows how little sort of confidence I have in whoever I put as the 6th seed to be a safe bet. The Chargers would have been here for sure, but injuries. It's always tough for 3 teams to come out of a division. So, yeah, I'm going with the Bengals. I think the young defense overachieves maybe, and the offense manages to actually improve. If the O-line is solid, they'll improve. They're far more talented than they were a year ago. Healthy AJ Green, he's going to be great. If Tyler Eifert stays healthy, that'll be great. Don't feel great about this one, but some of the other teams I could put there, like Dolphins. I just think it's not even about the Tannehill injury. There's just been too many others across the board. The interior of that offensive line concerns me. The entire back seven concerns me. So, I think they're going to struggle. They've got a brutal schedule as well. So I can't. They could sneak in, but I'm not feeling it at this point. The Texans, discussed them a little bit earlier. Pretty dubious about the Texans' offense. Defensively, confident they'll be a great unit. But, you've got to score points at the end of the day, especially in the regular season. I think defense is better at bailing you out in the playoffs. The regular season is the offense that gets you those wins, and I don't think they're going to be good enough. The Jags have Blake Bortles, enough said. The Colts are a tire fire. The Ravens, I don't think, are going to be very good this year. That offense could be a real issue. And the Chargers and Broncos are both teams I could see making it. I like aspects of the team, but I just think both are going to have too many problems on the offensive line. The injuries, I think, have just really hurt San Diego. Not San Diego, LA now, but the Chargers. We'll call them the Chargers. They've really hurt them, so I think they're going to probably be a bit more middling than I'd like in a tough division, as I say, with a tough schedule. So there you have it. Those are my thoughts on the 2017 playoff picture 1 week before regular season kickoff. So we're getting close. I'm excited about it. As always, let me know what you guys think, whether it's the comment section below, the Cover Zero Facebook page. Find me on Twitter at Simon Conboy. I'll be always happy to talk ball with people. And thank you so much for watching. I've done my season preview series covering every team. Check those out if you've enjoyed this. There's the weekly roundtable, me and a couple of friends just discussing what's going on at the moment in the NFL. They're going to be a weekly thing now. I think they're well worth checking out. And there'll be other bits and pieces every day. Once the season begins, there's going to be game reviews. I'm hoping those are going to be very interesting for people. I'm going to try and get some real detail in there, and the sort of thing I don't think you'll be getting anywhere else. So check those out. And if you can like, share, subscribe, check out the Patreon. It'll all be greatly, greatly appreciated. Thank you so much for watching. It's been a pleasure as always. Have a great evening. And go Bucks.